Hi everyone! I want to thank you for joining our webinar today, 4 Easy Steps to DIY Mail. I'm Abby Tularia from Melissa Data, and joining me today is our mailing specialist, Tony Deacon. Tony will give you expert tips on everything you need to successfully DIY mail at the lowest postal rates. This webinar is the first of our series of mailing training courses. We'll also have a course on making standard mail stellar and how to mail to your best customers with saturation mail and more. You'll hear more about our sessions soon. But before we get started, I want to encourage everyone to submit questions today. You can type those in at any time during the presentation and towards the end of the webinar. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can, but if we aren't able to get to your question, Tony will be happy to answer offline. This webinar will be recorded, so if you miss anything or want to forward to someone, you'll be able to do so. All right, we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to hand off the mic to Tony.
Hello everyone, thanks. Again, my name is Tony Deacon. I work with Melissa Data. Thank you all for attending. Glad to have you. Today we're just going to start the basics of a series of mailings. So we're going to just go over the basics this time and get into greater detail in future ones. Melissa Data is 30 years now doing address validation and postal software. Melissa Data partners with the USPS and Canada Post. We've done address checking in the US and Canada for probably 20 years now. And now we're also starting to partner with Deutsche Post, Royal Mail, and we're branching into address validation internationally as well. Melissa Data works with a variety of large companies and organizations, some of which are listed here. And since 1985, more than 10,000 customers worldwide have relied on Melissa Data to make their mailing services and direct mail more productive and profitable. Why mail? Mailing equals omni-channel. If you're looking into multi-channel marketing, then mailing can be a valid part of that campaign. While you can do combinations of digital and printed copy, you'll get more likely to get better results than you would just doing one or the other alone. The response rate to mail can be 2% higher than email, so doing both can always be a good idea. With mailing volumes having gone down, obviously mailing's not what it once was. Now the post office has less to deliver. Mail volumes reduced means less competition in the mailbox for your piece. Less clutter in the mailbox, more likely your piece will be noticed. Mailing can also still be a good way to kick off new businesses or to remind customers you're still there. New customer promotions, coupons, things like that. The things you need to do before mailing. These are things you'd want to consider before you actually decide to mail to help you determine what type of mail you want to do, what kind of costs you'd be interested in allowing for. First step, determine your audience. Second step, looking into a mailing list, the data you have, and or validating it or supplementing it. The third step, deciding whether to do these steps yourself or to hire someone who specializes in this work. Step number 1, determining your audience. Your customer base and their location or geography can help you determine what type of mailing would be the best for you, such as targeting local customers or targeting customers based on demographics, not related to where they are. For example, if you're a pizza place, then most likely you're only going to go for geography. You want the customers that are close to you. Most likely in a radius or within a delivery area. So in that case, you don't care so much for the demographics as the location. Another example might be A magazine, if you do mail order magazines, in that case, it would not be related to geography or where the customers are, but more likely to be targeted based on demographics such as age or income, maybe boat owners or homeowners or medical professionals, things like that. So then the next thing you need to look into is if you already have a mailing list or if you need to purchase a mailing list. Obviously, mailing lists can be produced for new homeowners, occupants, business, new movers, medical professionals, automobile owners, any kind of demographic. If you already have your own list, you can look into having additional records or leads added to that list. For example, the new subdivision that was built since you went into business, you may have all the surrounding addresses, but you need the new ones. So maybe starting with your own customer list, but looking into adding to it or improving it by adding more data or verifying or correcting the data you already do have. So then you'd have to decide for yourself if it's something you want to do yourself, depending on the cost and the effort involved, whether it'd be worth it for you to do it on your own, or whether you just prefer to pay a slightly higher price per piece, but have professionals who specialize in this work do it for you. The type of mail, what, when, how category, the type of mail you send will affect the price you'll have to pay. The size and shape of the mailing affects its postage. The larger a mail piece, the more it would cost to mail. So for example, postcards, business reply mail with an envelope inside, a fold-out menu, or maybe a catalog, all these would have different prices, and the size and weight of the piece does affect the price to ship it. Another consideration is it time sensitive? If you need it to be there and be back within a certain number of business days, first class guarantees a faster turnaround. Whereas standard mail doesn't guarantee as quick a turnaround, but does have substantial discounts in price. So if your piece is time sensitive, you probably want to opt for first class to know that it will be there within a certain number of business days. And if it's not time sensitive, then you could save a substantial amount by choosing standard mail. How far it's going won't affect the price, as you can mail anything in the US for the same price, but it might affect how long it takes for it to get there. These are options you'd want to consider before you decide what type of mail to do. So we're going to go over 4 basic steps of do-it-yourself mail, just to cover the rough basis of what has to be taken care of in order to do this. Step 1 has to do with the data you already have. If you have a mailing list, you are required by the USPS to standardize, validate the addresses so that you're mailing to valid deliverable locations and not just sending junk mail all over the place that has to be returned to you. The USPS requires CAS certification, that stands for the Coding Accuracy Support System, and involves verifying that the addresses you're mailing to are currently known to be valid addresses and that they receive mail. When you validate against the USPS database, it verifies that your address should exist within the zip code on that street name. And then it also checks delivery point tables to verify that that address not only exists, but is currently receiving mail and is a known delivery point. There are also other databases required to run your data against to verify you're not sending bad addresses. The LACS, Locatable Address Correction System, is one of those, and this is normally referred to as the 911 addresses or the emergency addresses, where the USPS, partnering with emergency services, is slowly replacing all rural routes and box routes with street addresses. So one of the requirements to be CAS certified is that your addresses are valid, are deliverable, and if there's a current new form of the address, you have to have that new form of the address. Also, this can be used to flag vacancies. If the delivery point has not received mail in 90 days, it can be automatically flagged as not currently receiving mail. This could be because it's vacant, or it could also reflect vacation homes or seasonal housing, where the mail is only forwarded to that location a certain number of months a year. In the US, there are currently approximately 160 million addresses, and in any given year, on average, 44 million people will move. So that's nearly 25% changing every single year. So if your data is a year or two old, you could well have many records that have completely changed or that people have moved. USPS NCOA, or National Change of Address Services, store the changes of address for 4 years, 48 months, so you can run your data against all the moves that have been reported in 4 years, and if any of the records, if John Smith at 120 Main Street has moved, then this would provide you his new address. Again, depending on the type of business you have, this may or may not be important. If you're a pizza place, then you don't care if John Smith lives at 120 Main Street. You just want to make sure that 120 Main Street has your phone number. But if, for example, you're an alumni association or charity group, you may want to follow John Smith even if he's moved. Step 2 for this, once you've validated your addresses and verified that they're all still current and deliverable, step 2 would be to remove duplicates. Up to 10% of the names and addresses in an average mailing list can be duplicate records. If you don't wish to mail more than one piece to an address, then you would definitely want to run duplicate check to make sure you're not just mailing extra pieces to the same people over and over. For example, at my own house, I receive a piece of mail from a charity, and then a few days later, the same piece of mail with the same name on it, and the only difference being one says Tony Deacon and the other says Mr. Tony Deacon. So they're wasting their money sending me extra pieces when they really didn't need to at all. Deduping your list can help save you money in the long run because you're not mailing to people more than once. Similar to deduping is suppression. You may have valid records, but not realize that some of them have requested do not mail. If they've added themselves to the do not mail suppression list, then it would certainly be a waste of money trying to send them mail, as they requested not to receive it and would probably be angry that you've sent it. Similar with deceased suppression. It's certainly a waste of money for you to send mail to somebody who's passed on and is no longer there. Inmate suppression is similar as well. If the person's in prison and not getting out for 10 years, you don't need to mail them the pizza catalog. Step 3, enhancing the data you do have. Data enhancements can come in many forms, but for example, if you have a name or a business, running your data against these sources can provide missing elements. For example, a suite or apartment number for a person, or if a business name is associated with a specific unit number or suite number. This can help reduce undeliverable mail. Pre-sort. This is the final step of bulk mailing, and this is the whole thing to mailing itself. Once you have secured a postal permit from the post office, this gives you permission to claim bulk mail rates. Pre-sorting can reduce your mail by an average of 35%, but obviously it can be quite more than that if you're comparing with first class. Pre-sorting is based basically on zip code and grouping the pieces together by zip code so that they are all together in the same container, going onto the same truck. This saves the USPS time and money, and therefore they offer you discounted rates. Bulk rates are far cheaper than single piece rates. There are discounts available for pre-sorted mail. So if you, for example, just have 500 pieces all in the same zip code, you put them in a box, that's pre-sorted. So you qualify for a discount. If you go the next step up from that and barcode those pieces, then rather than non-automation, they become automation compatible pieces, as a barcode allows a machine to read it and no humans required to read it. So you receive a discount for pre-sorting, you receive an additional larger discount for automation compatible mail. Because you're doing part of their job, they give you greater and greater discount the more of their job you're doing. The lowest tiers, line of travel, walk sequence, we'll go over in a future webinar, but those allow you to claim even greater savings, the cheapest rates that they have available. In order to do a mailing, you have to have your permit to have permission to do bulk mail, and then there's some basic paperwork required with that mail. Form 3553 is also known as the CAS form, which we discussed in address checking. This is a form that's a certificate that proves you've run your addresses against a certified software or certified databases to verify that the addresses you're mailing are valid and deliverable, that they haven't changed, or that they're not vacant. The Qualification Report is another report required, and this essentially is similar to a bill of lading in that it tells them how many pieces of mail you're handing them, where they are going to by zip code, so that they can keep track of what they're charging you in the next form, the postage statement. The postage statement has to do with the money. You'll have the total price for the postage as well as breakdown of per piece rates. So one report says I'm handing you all this mail, and the next report shows the discounts you're claiming on those pieces. You'll also need container, sack, or tray barcoded labels so that the container filled with mail can be easily routed to the proper truck and get to the right location. Now, of course, you could do all of these things by hand, though it's becoming more difficult as they come up with new rules. But at Melissa Data, we had for 25 years now Mailers Plus 4, which is our software solution that will help you do all of these steps, meet all of these requirements, and is quite easy to use. Next, we'd like to do a quick demo just to show the basics of the software, just to show you essentially how those steps can be done in order. We're just going to do a quick one this time, and we'll leave more detailed ones to future webinars. But this will just be a quick gloss over so you can see all the steps we just discussed can actually be done quite quickly and easily if you're using software. There are two versions of the software. We'll discuss that later. We have a standard version, which is limited to 5,000 records at a time for smaller organizations, churches, things like that aren't doing large mailings, and it's at a cheaper rate than the professional version. The Mailers Plus 4 professional version is unlimited and can process millions of records if you needed it to. So here we'd like to do a quick demo of the software.
Okay, so Tony's getting ready to do a short demo. We're going to pretend that we're a pizzeria and we just opened for business, and we want to let our customers know of our grand opening. So we're going to launch a direct mail campaign. Tony's going to show you how to do that.
So this is our software, Mailers Plus 4. When you open it, you'll see a blank here, and you can open a file. I'm using our test file because it's the only one I've got on this machine. This is a built-in file that you can use to test the software even if you don't have your own files. And you can see it displays the records here. And generally speaking, to do a mailing from start to finish, you really just need to follow these buttons in order. So the very first one, opening the file, we just did that. Now we have a file open. The next step is format, or mapping the fields. It tries to automatically map these fields, and with our test file you can see it was able to, so it matched up all the fields with what the data is inside them. You can also do this manually if for some reason it doesn't detect automatically. You can highlight a line and check off the appropriate box, and this way you're telling the software which field has what data in it, so that when it processes, it's looking at the address, city, state, zip code, etc. Once those file is open and we've mapped the fields, we can go on to the first step of our DIY mailing, which is the address check. This is CAS certified by the post office. These are some basic processing options, though none of them really will affect the mailability of your piece. They're mostly just for your own preferences, whether you want it to change or leave the casing, how you wish it to standardize, certain options there. When you click go, it's running your addresses against the national database of the USPS, as well as the additional tables, DPV, LAX, all of those. And you can see it'll do about 100 records a second. This is not only verifying the addresses should exist, it's also checking that they're delivery points. It's also checking if there's a new form of the address, it will substitute it. And at the end, you can preview any that failed, so you can see if they look bad to you. There's options to delete those or remove them. There's an option to split this into two lists, so you could keep the bad records but not keep them in your mailing file. And again, the CAS form 3553, which is a certificate showing that you used certified software to verify your addresses before mailing them. This is a requirement of USPS. So the first step, address check, is done. The addresses are validated. We've standardized them into USPS standards, the appropriate abbreviations, punctuation, etc., the way the post office wants it. The next step, if you think you might have duplicate records and you don't want to send duplicates, you can check for duplicates by address, name and address, any key field in the list. You can choose whether or not it matches phone numbers, suite numbers, depending on your needs. For example, if you're a pizza place, probably just address. If you want to send refrigerator magnets to everybody in your delivery area, then you probably don't care who lives there, as long as they're in your delivery area. Conversely, I spoke with a customer before who did voting records and polling data. And in his case, if there were two different names at the same address, he had to send two pieces. So then he would do it by name and address. Once you go, it runs a quick dupe check, finds 36 dupes, you can see that. You can view these. It'll show which records it found to match. So you could decide which ones to keep, which ones to delete, whether they were both valid and you wanted to keep both. And this can help you reduce mailing pieces to people who don't need them, or sending more than one piece when you only need to send one. So now that you've run the address check, the duplicate check to remove any records you don't wish to mail, the key to the savings to discounted rates is pre-sort. Now in pre-sort, if you have same jobs over and over and over, you can save these as templates so you won't have to go through any of these screens. But it's a wizard-based pre-sort, so you can just select the type of mailing you're doing, whether it's first class, periodicals, standard, whether it's a letter card or a flat size. You can enter your dimensions so it calculates the number of pieces per tray. Here you can enter your information so that it prints out directly on the form electronically, and options to indicate the change of address services you've done. The software will always try for the cheapest rate at things you can possibly get, and then if there are any pieces left over that didn't fall into that category, then it will try for the next cheapest and the next cheapest, all the way down to residual mail, which is any piece that could not qualify for any discount at all and would go at full price. The container tags are the tags that will go on the container itself. We'll see those at the end. And we'll leave customize and destinations for a future webinar. Right now, we're just going to go through the basics. Pre-sorting is where it's deciding how many zip codes you've got that can go together, figuring out how to group them for the greatest savings. The first report being the qualification report we discussed. That has to do with the number of trays of pieces you're sending. Sorry about that, protected mode. This indicates how many pieces you're sending. They're grouped by zip code. And you can see here, tray 1, tray 2, tray 3. These are 1 foot tray size. This is the pre-sort category, 5-digit scheme, the zip code it's going to, how many pieces are in it, and the rate they're going at. These all went at automation 5-digit, meaning they all had the same 5-digit zip code or zip codes that could scheme together. We'll cover that stuff in a more detailed pre-sort webinar. Some of these other reports, mailing summary, pre-sort parameters, are for your own records, so you can keep them on file, but not actually required by the post office. Again, the CAS form that we check the addresses is required. Qualification that shows the mail we're handing in is required. And the postage statement here, which has to do with the money. This shows your total for the mailing, as well as the per piece rates. And as you can see, over 49 cents for a letter, standard 5-digit gets you all the way down to just under 27 cents. So right there, you're saving half. And there are even lower rates in different tiers that we'll discuss in other webinars. Tray and sack tags, these we'll view real quick. Once you have a container of mail, then you put a barcode label in the little pocket sleeve of the container so that the post office can just scan the barcode and route the entire container of mail to the appropriate truck based on the zip codes that they're going to. Anytime you do a new mailing, it'll ask you if you want to save it. You can save any mailing you do, so it will remember all the settings you chose, and the next time you go to pre-sort, you can choose that as a job. Though this doesn't have to do with any postal forms, and many people print outside the software. If they're familiar with using other software, you can export and print from any software you like. Otherwise, there is built-in printing function in mailers that can do labels, or of course, envelopes, letter size, and you can also create your own new forms. So using this, you can do a mailing from start to finish by yourself. Simply give it a name, and then double-click these fields to make an address block. So I've saved this. You can, of course, have several different templates if you have different jobs that have different requirements for the label. I'm just doing a basic one right now to save on time. This is default pre-sort, but there are ways you can print other pieces if you don't want to pre-sort. Those we can cover some other time. There are options to have separator level if you wanted to pause the printer or send a blank label through whenever it's time to change the tray or the package. Previously, we have these drivers for old printers, but these are old DOS drivers that printed directly to parallel port, and now with the new barcode, it's best to just leave it on Windows driver for every printer. You can preview these. So currently you can see we've done barcoded labels. And of course it doesn't have to be labels. You can also choose envelopes. For example, envelope number 10, same template. You can preview that, and now you've got a single address. And as we're running quick on time, I'm going to close that. Though we'll do future webinars where we go into greater detail on pre-sorts, greater detail on all of these options. Sorry, I didn't mean to close this. I apologize. And if you feel like you're not ready to do it yourself, we do offer all of these tools where you can run your databases against them. You don't have to do it yourself. And on our website, we actually have a lookup where you can search by zip code for any places that professionally do mailings near you. For more information, you can go to our website for a free trial of the software. You can try Mailers Plus 4 for free. We also have a department that handles lists and specialty lists. They can pull additional records for you in your area or by demographics, so you can supplement existing databases, or if you just need to purchase new leads in general. Again, we also have a lookup so you can find the nearest mailing house if you don't feel you're up to doing it yourself. Next, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Tony. As Tony said, we're going to move into the Q&A portion of the webinar. So if you have any questions, please type them in now. I want to remind you that I will be sending out a link to a recording of today's webinar, and you should expect to receive via email by the end of the week. So we've got a lot of questions here. Let me go through them 1 second. Okay, our first question here is, how many pieces do you have to qualify for a pre-sort rate?
Okay, that's a good question, though there's a couple different answers. If you're doing standard mail, the requirement is 200 pieces or 50 pounds, whichever comes first. Anything less than that, you can't qualify for bulk rates. Now with first class, it has a faster turnaround and slightly higher prices, but they require minimum 500 pieces and has to be in groups of 500.
Okay, our next question is, we normally purchase our mailing list from Melissa Data. Are they validating the mailing list with the national database before we receive it, or are we supposed to validate the list we just purchased from them?
Oh, another good question. When you purchase a list from Melissa Data, normally it would come with a CAS form that you can print out separately. Though there are some exceptions. They can put together lists that are certified, or they can pull records for you that are not. Generally, you'd want to ask them about that because it should automatically come with the CAS form. That doesn't necessarily mean the records you purchased have also been run against deceased files or change of address files, but they are at least CAS certified records.
Okay, our next question is, I know that some sort of move update method is required for bulk mail. Does Melissa Data offer any of this kind of service?
We do. Melissa Data has been certified to do national change of address for many years. Generally speaking, for change of address, you have to either have it done by the post office or by someone licensed by the post office to do this. We have a data enhancement department that has been certified to do national change of address for US and Canada for many years. So you can upload your file and have us run it, or you can use our software to upload it automatically yourself. But we actually have more than one version that, depending on volume and cost, you can choose what's best for you.
Another question is, up to how many records can Mailers Plus 4 pre-sort at once?
That's a tricky question. When you're talking about address check or address cleansing, it's not limited. You can do millions of records. Though pre-sort itself, I think, is limited to under 1 million. Of course, it's very rare anybody's going to be printing and mailing 1 million pieces at one time.
Another question is Mailers Plus 4 supported only on the Windows platform or on OS X as well?
Currently, we only have support for Windows machines, though as a lot of the new Macs run Windows, you can probably run it on one of those with Parallels or some version of Windows, though we don't technically test for it.
Another question, I didn't see any options for nonprofit mailing. Is it possible with this setup?
Oh, I apologize. In the pre-sort wizard, when we sort of skim through what type of mailing, first class, periodical, there is an option in there for nonprofit as well. So if you choose nonprofit and enter a nonprofit organization's authorization number, it will qualify you for nonprofit rates, which are the cheapest of all.
Can you segment mailings by age or birth date?
Essentially, with Mailers Plus 4, you can segment the mailings by any field you have in the file. There's a filter function we can go over in a future webinar that allows you to filter your records based on any field you have. So for example, if you have a birth date or age column, you could definitely make filters so it would only include records that were above this or below that or within a certain range. We can go into that in greater detail, but using the filter, you can do that based on any field you've got in the file.
We have time for one more question. Okay, here's another one. I am interested in trying Mailers Plus 4. Do you offer any kind of help or tutorial to help us get started?
We do, actually. There's free demos of Mailers Plus 4 you can get from the sales reps in our software department. And support for all of our products is included, including demos. So if you run into trouble or have questions, you can call tech support directly for help. We also do offer walkthroughs. Though you have to schedule them ahead of time, we can give you a tutorial on the software if you need one of those.
Anyways, it looks like that's all the time we have right now. If you submitted a question that did not get answered, please contact Tony via email or phone. His information is provided on the screen. Thank you again for attending today's webinar. Have a great day and see you next time. Bye.